It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, 3 lives lost and another changed forever. A teenage driver who took laughing gas behind the wheel is jailed for 9 years after killing 3 of his friends in a high-speed crash.
There's no joy. It doesn't really bring me any comfort, and it doesn't change the fact that 3 of us won't see our sons again.
Tonight, we'll hear from Alex Hancock about his son Daniel and the group of friends whose night out ended in tragedy. Also ahead, we'll bring you a special report on the children spending years living in temporary accommodation. 4-year-old Logan has spent more than half his life without a permanent home after his mum fled domestic violence. We'll bring you his story. Plus, pressure grows on the Prime Minister over the decision not to compensate the Waspi women hit by a change in the state pension age. We'll hear from one of the millions of women affected. And as rumours swirl about Marcus Rashford's future, he's been busy with a different job, delivering Christmas presents to pupils at his old primary school. We'll be speaking to one of the teachers. Well, that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. It's every parent's worst nightmare. Something horrific happening to your child while they're out with their friends. Tonight, 3 sets of parents say that they are united in grief after their teenage son's night out ended in tragedy when their car crashed at high speed. The driver, 19-year-old Thomas Johnson, had been inhaling nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, while he was behind the wheel and speeding at more than 100 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. This afternoon, he pleaded guilty to causing the deaths of his 3 friends, Daniel Hancock, Ethan Goddard and Elliot Pullen, and he was sentenced to more than 9 years in prison. In just a moment, we'll hear from Daniel's father. But first, Sadia Chowdhury has this report.
Moments before their deaths, Thomas Johnson's passengers laugh.
Oh, oh.
Tyres screech as he drifts around the corner. The vehicle's electronic stability control has been deliberately switched off. For hours, he and 2 of his passengers had been taking nitrous oxide. It dangerously impaired Johnson's driving. He sped over 100 miles an hour in roads marked 30. Here, he aggressively overtakes another car before crashing into a tree.
He's overtaken at what she describes as extreme excessive speed and he's gone out of view. A matter of seconds later, they've come around the bend to find debris in the road and the same vehicle that's overtaken her in the trees.
Daniel Hancock and Ethan Goddard, both aged 18, and Elliot Pullen, 17, were all killed.
A very, empty feeling, I think. Doesn't feel like a family anymore. It's very difficult. How's it been for your parents? So hard. It feels like I lost my brother and my parents.
Can't understand why he made the decision he made.
Yeah.
That's the main thing I can't come to terms with.
It's not an accident. Now that we've seen the footage, seen the videos, seen the evidence, it was an accident waiting to happen. It was just completely reckless, dangerous behaviour. There's no way that anybody can, in their right mind, can think that they can drive around at the speeds they were driving while inhaling nitrous oxide balloons and consider that to be safe.
Thomas Johnson says he doesn't remember what happened, but a police interview reveals he was aware of the risks.
Do you remember ever having done that before?
No, not this year, no. I remember doing it once last year with a group of friends, before I could even drive. And no, I don't have any recollection after that.
Do you remember what the effect of it was?
No, it made me just my head feel dizzy.
Johnson arrived for sentencing with a weekend bag, no doubt aware he'd go away for much, much longer. In court, the judge remarked about his excessive speed, his driving impaired, having ingested nitrous oxide for hours leading up to the crash, and his decision to turn off the vehicle's safety controls. But she said she accepted his remorse.
Johnson alone was responsible for these deaths. He did not set out that night to harm anyone, but his decisions did directly and tragically result in the deaths of Ethan, Elliot and Daniel.
No sentence can bring home the boys lost by these families, but they hope tonight all drivers will feel warned. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
A little earlier, I spoke to Daniel Hancock's father, Alex. Daniel was just 18 with his whole life ahead of him when he was killed in that crash in June last year. I started by asking his dad for his reaction to today's sentencing.
I have to look at it as Tom is a young man. He at the time of the accident, he just turned 18 himself. So while he has to face up to the consequences of his actions, and he has done, I do have, as I see him in the dock in court, I just see a child the same age as my child. And as I said in my statement in court today, there are no winners. There's no winners today. That's 4 families have been left devastated by the events of that evening in June last year. So I have to say mixed emotions, and I know that some of the other families maybe feel differently to me. I don't take any pleasure or any satisfaction from seeing one of Daniel's friends, another person's son, be sent to prison for 9 years, or will be 6 years, I guess, by the time he comes out. So there's no joy. It doesn't really bring me any comfort, and it doesn't change the fact that 3 of us won't see our sons again.
Alex, the judge said the actions of Thomas Johnson, Tom, your son's friend, were teenage mistakes. His defence lawyer saying he was genuinely remorseful and that his immaturity clearly had a part in his decision-making that night. He himself has life-changing injuries and will carry the burden of the knowledge that he killed 3 of his friends. What do you know about what happened that night? We've now seen some of the mobile footage that was taken from inside that car just moments before the crash that killed your son. I wonder what that was like to watch.
Obviously, it's difficult to watch, isn't it? But, I knew my son, I knew his friends, certainly some of his friends. They were teenagers. They were teenage boys. We've all been teenagers. I was a teenage boy. A lot of the things that they done were not with our approval or with our consent. But I guess boys will be boys, teenagers will be teenagers, and I think anyone who thinks that their teenage child is off out living the life of an angel is probably deluding themselves somewhat. And I know that doesn't apply to everybody, but they were boys. They were having fun. They were out doing stupid things, as teenagers tend to do. They all got in the car of their own volition. As you see from the videos, I guess there's nobody there screaming at him to slow down or stop, or tell him to stop doing what he's doing. But ultimately, as the person driving the car, Tom has to take responsibility for his actions. Daniel hadn't passed the driving test. He'd never had a driving lesson, so he was an innocent passenger in that vehicle, and he trusted Tom with his life, as did the 2 other boys, and Tom grossly betrayed their trust by taking the actions that he took. They were teenagers out having fun, ultimately, and it's a tragedy for everybody.
Yeah. The senior investigating officer in this case, Detective Sergeant Tony Jenkins, said that Ethan, Elliot and Daniel stood no chance in this accident and he said that Tom will have to live with the consequences of his decision that night for the rest of his life, as will you. And I wonder how, as a parent, I mean, as you said, we've all been teenagers. Many of us are now the parents of teenagers, soon-to-be teens. We know how difficult it is to get them to understand the consequences of fun. You know, nitrous oxide is called laughing gas. It's in balloons. Kids don't see the harm of it. It wasn't illegal at the time of the crash. It is now. I wonder how you get through to young people, how you want what happened to Daniel and his friends to help get through to young people, particularly young boys, young men.
It's a difficult question, isn't it? Because, you know, children very rarely listen to the advice given by their parents, but don't give up giving that advice. Like I said before, I didn't condone of some of the actions. We'd already had discussions about nitrous oxide the week before the accident, when I'd found a canister in Daniel's bedroom and said that, you know, it's not something that I was prepared to accept in the house. All I can hope really is that other people see the consequences of the actions that Tom took on that evening, and maybe think twice. And you know, it's not worth it for a few minutes or a few hours of fun to be so reckless to put your friends' lives and anybody's life in danger. You know, you could have crashed into another vehicle, pedestrians. I don't believe this was an accident. This was a result of reckless and dangerous behaviour, and it was almost an inevitable outcome of the actions of Tom that evening.
Alex Hancock there talking to me about his son Daniel killed in the car crash where the driver was inhaling laughing gas just moments before. The 18-year-old charged with killing 3 girls at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport last summer has pled not guilty pleas entered on his behalf. Axel Rudakabana refused to speak in Liverpool Crown Court when he was asked to respond to 16 charges that he faces. Our chief North of England correspondent Greg Milam has the latest from court.
Well, Axel Rudakabana appeared at this hearing via video link. As at previous hearings, he refused to confirm his name. He stayed silent when he was asked. What was different to previous hearings is that he didn't cover his face with his sweatshirt this time. We could see his face during the hearing. He looked around, looked at the floor, looked behind him. The point of the hearing was for him to enter pleas to those 16 charges he faces. When he was asked to do that, he refused to speak again. So the judge, Mr. Justice Goose, said he was satisfied that was a refusal to enter pleas and therefore entered not guilty pleas himself on all of those 16 charges. They are, of course, including 3 charges of murder, the murders of Elsie Stankham, B.B. King and Alice Aguiar at that Taylor Swift-themed dance event in Southport in July. He also faces 10 charges of attempted murder, including 8 of children aged between 7 and 13 at that event, 2 adults as well. A charge of the possession of a kitchen knife, and then 2 other charges that were added later, that production of a biological agent, ricin, and also possession of what's been described as an Al-Qaeda training manual. So not guilty pleas entered by the judge to all of those charges. There were in court some family members of some of those who were caught up in those events in July, watching the proceedings. They heard, as we all did, confirmation that Axel Rudakabana's trial is due to start on January the 20th and is expected to last about 4 weeks.
Rent prices in England have hit another record high, rising by almost 10% in the past year. This is according to the latest ONS figures. It comes as a Sky News investigation has found that some children in England are spending more than 5.5 years living in temporary accommodation. Data from Freedom of Information requests shows that the problem is getting worse, with the average length of stay up by nearly 1/5 since 2020. Sky's Adele Robinson has spent time with one family who have spent 3 years sharing a single room, knowing they could be stuck for at least 3 more.
A child of the housing crisis. This is Logan, aged 1, 2 years old, and 3. For most of his life, temporary accommodation's all he's known with his mum, Nicole.
Do you like your home?
Yeah.
Do you like being at home?
It's Mummy's home.
His playground.
We're going to have it on here.
His kitchen. His life.
Would you like some water?
All in one room.
He did a big bang!
But they're just one of thousands of families spending longer and longer in places like this. A Sky News investigations found some children are spending up to 5.5 years in temporary accommodation.
They told me I could be here for another 3 years. So he'll be nearly 6 before I leave. And it's like, how do you take that? You know, some days it makes me cry, some days I'm like, well, it's what it is. But really and truly, I hate it. I don't want him to be suffering in one room.
No, maybe.
We first met Logan and Nicole in emergency accommodation in 2022. She's here because she fled domestic violence.
They group all of us together, people with mental health and, you know, people who drink and do drugs and stuff.
She works full-time, but couldn't afford rent.
Can I get on the back, please?
Each day was a 4-hour round trip for childcare.
I've worked since I was 17. I've dedicated my life to working, so why am I finding it so difficult?
Are you okay? I know you're doing everything for Logan, but are you okay?
I mean, I'm tired.
A year later, October 2023, and they've been moved.
He's nearly a toddler, or is a toddler.
Another temporary room in a hostel.
Do you feel safe here?
No, temporary accommodation isn't safe for a child. It isn't safe for anyone under the age of 7. But when the government are giving nothing to the council and the council have nowhere to put us, they're literally putting us where they have, be it safe or not.
Nicole's juggling a full-time job as project manager for an IT company, as a single mother, and living like this.
Don't go back to sleep.
When Logan first moved into temporary accommodation, he was 1.
Turn the light on.
He's now 2, with no end in sight.
Does it take its toll on you, do you think?
Between the last place and here, all my hair fell out because of my anxiety and I wasn't sleeping and I was so stressed, and you can see like the little bits of it growing here now.
The long-term impact on children is also on Nicole's mind.
If we stay here any longer, the more he understands and the more he remembers, that's when the impact will get worse.
So you sort of worry there's the pressure you want to get out before a certain age.
But I don't think I'll get out.
You don't have any hope of that?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because they're telling me 3 years from here now. So I would walk a different route, but yeah.
As the housing crisis deepens, making ends meet is still a struggle for many like Nicole.
I was in the food bank several times, and in a way, I feel unjustifiable to go to the food bank because I work and I earn money, but I had no money in my pocket. I had no food in my cupboards. I had nothing. I genuinely had no choice. I had no food to put in my son's mouth. I had no food to put in my own mouth.
Claire's a lawyer at Southwark Law Centre. In the past year, she's dealt with more and more cases of children in temporary accommodation and seen their education and life prospects eroded.
You have the long-term impact on children's mental health. You have the social isolation. Children in hotel rooms don't have desks to be able to do their work at. They fall behind their peers so quickly. And my fear is that it leads to a 2-tier society. So we're talking a significant number who will grow up with completely different life chances.
Sky News data shows families with children are spending longer in temporary accommodation than anyone else. And it's a postcode lottery, worse in London and the South East than any other region. But there's a sharp difference too in the length of stays even within those areas, anything from 2 weeks to over 5.5 years. Why is there such a big difference? Well, it's down to how much housing stock each council has, and that varies depending on where you live. Part of the long-term answer is to build more homes. The government has a target of 1.5 million new ones in 5 years.
Talk is cheap. It's action that counts.
The Shadow Housing Minister describes Labour's plan as confused.
Look at the maps. Look at the map where those houses are. Many of the boroughs of London have seen a decrease in their targets for housing delivery. A decrease. Yet we know the demand in London for rough sleeping, for temporary accommodation is at the highest. So that makes no sense. So it's chaotic right now. It's all over the place.
The government say they've inherited the consequences of years of failure to grip the housing crisis and are working at pace to end homelessness.
Ready?
But almost another year on, in 2024, Logan and Nicole are still in the hostel.
So he's turned 2 and 3 in temporary accommodation?
Yeah, and probably 4.
Oh, wow. So. Most of his life?
Pretty much, yeah. Most of his childhood, anyway, which has been sad because I feel like these are the most important years where they grow and, you know, they build themselves.
And for the first time, Nicole's considering leaving London, where she was born.
I can't even get through the reference checks in the estate agents because I don't earn enough. So they're saying to me that I need to
Because it's one income?
Yeah. So for me, it's like, it's almost embarrassing. I have a good job.
Her priority now is to get Logan out.
He always says, oh, why do we only have one room? Which is sad, because I don't know what to say. Sorry.
Do you find it hard emotionally when he asks you those questions?
Yeah, I do, because it's like, I don't want to lie to him, which is the hardest, but also I don't really know how to tell him the truth.
Temporary accommodation is not truly temporary anymore in this crisis, displacing a generation of children for longer. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Well, Adele is with me in the studio now, and you can just get a sense of the stress and the emotional toll that this takes on the parents who are in this position, the children at that age, resilient, but they are getting to the age where they ask questions and it makes a difference to their little lives. You touched on it a little bit there about the government's plans, but, you know, how do we solve this crisis? Are the government getting anywhere close to what's needed?
Well, they all know what they need to do. I mean, the crisis in housing, there are many interconnected issues, as you know, and they're complicated. The main one we talk about all the time, we talked about it just there, the lack of social housing, and successive governments, they've all set targets to build new homes. Must be mentioned that, as yet, most recently, none of them have made these targets, but they know what needs to be done. And just today, the Prime Minister was saying, he talked about the root causes of temporary accommodation. He was asked specifically about children in temporary accommodation, and he said that they are tackling them, the lack of housing and the rental market, because let's not forget, a huge factor in this is rents, how high they are. And just today, statistics have been released showing that they are at a record high yet again. In the last year, they've risen at a record rate, more than ever before. So people are now spending, and this is just on average, so it's not the higher end or the lower end, right in the middle, £1,362 a month. It's gone up by £116 since last year. And that's a lot for families, especially with inflation rising still. The cost of living last year eased somewhat this year, but many people are still suffering. And from our FOI request, the Freedom of Information request, we're seeing what that backed up in the stats today, that London and the South East are the worst affected areas. And effectively, the worst affected, we know, are the places that are which have the local councils with the least amount of homes available. And that's going to vary, isn't it? And you've got Nicole there. She's on a decent wage. She works full-time. She can't even get through the door for properties, for rental properties. And if you apply that to councils, it's the same for them. You know, you need landlords to be able to make their properties accessible on a price range to very vulnerable people who are on low incomes, effectively. And she's not necessarily on a really low income. So where does it leave us?
Yeah, so, you know, the number of houses, there needs to be more. The cost of rent spiralling. The government has also said that they're going to ban no-fault evictions. How does that feed into this picture? How's that going to help?
Yeah, Section 21, no-fault evictions, they are a part of the law that means that landlords can evict people without a reason in 2 months, basically, 2 months' notice. And
for a lot of people, it's because they want to put the rent up.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the rental market, the way it is, it's not like it used to be years ago. You could look for somewhere on a Monday and find somewhere on a Friday. It can take months and months and months to find somewhere.
People are bidding against each other, aren't they?
Well, yeah, exactly. And as Nicole was saying there, she's not even being considered. I mean, let's face it, if you've got loads of, you know, the supply of houses is not meeting the demand of people needing them. And if you're a landlord and you've got loads of couples with double incomes and you've got the choice between them and a single parent with a child, what are you going to choose? Not saying that's what all landlords do, but at the end of the day, a lot of landlords, they're not making money out of their their businesses anyway. It's a pension pot. They're not necessarily making any profit
they've got
at all.
rising mortgages, so they want the higher rent.
Yeah, exactly. So the Section 21 landlords aren't happy about it, but it will take the power away from them and it will lean more towards tenants' rights. Also, the government are planning on beefing up the law around it in that it will mean that they can't raise the rents mid-tenancy, for example. So there are other things going on, but then there are workarounds. They're worried about landlords basically finding loopholes or using different parts of the law to get people out. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens. They're expecting actually a rise in people being evicted before the Section 121 ban comes into place next year.
OK, Adele, thank you. Adele Robinson there with that report into temporary accommodation. Still to come on the programme tonight, a criminology student found guilty of the murder and attempted murder of 2 women on a beach in Bournemouth. We'll bring you the details. Also coming up, as Adele mentioned there, inflation going up once again. We'll take a look at what it means for you. And Marcus Rashford returns to his old primary school to hand out a whopping 420 presents to pupils. We'll be hearing from one of the teachers.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forceful, pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited. I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
A criminology student has been found guilty of murder and attempted murder after stabbing 2 women on a beach in Bournemouth. 20-year-old Nazeen Sadi fatally stabbed personal trainer Amy Gray 10 times as she sat beside a fire on the beach in May this year. Her friend, 38-year-old Leanne Mars, was seriously injured in the attack. Well, Molly Malone joins me now in the studio, and people watching tonight will remember this story. It was big news as the hunt for the perpetrator took quite a while. We've now reached the court stage. What was heard today?
Well, the perpetrator, Nazim Saadi, was in Court 1 in Winchester, Crown Court. He wore a navy jumper and appeared to be emotionless as that verdict was delivered. He was looking down at his feet and took a step back. He was found, as you said, guilty of the murder of a 34-year-old personal trainer, Amy Gray, and for the attempted murder of her friend, 38-year-old Leanne Miles. Now, she survived the attack, but was found to have 20 knife wounds, suffering serious injuries. Now, the jury took just over 5.5 hours to reach their verdict, but it was the course of a 9-day trial, and in that time we heard about how Nadine Zadi, a criminology student in London, liked true crime, liked horror films. We heard that he'd asked his teachers and his lecturers about DNA and how long it stays behind. He'd asked about murder and how to evade it, essentially. He also found that he'd been searching online about previous cases, so the murder of Brianna Guy, the murder of Millie Dowler and her killer Levi Belfield. So it painted a picture in the build-up to this attack of the sorts of things that he'd been looking into online, and difficult hearing, of course, for the family of those involved.
Yeah, what was the reaction in court? Because it's startling for us to hear, so to be in that room and hear that about the man accused of murder and attempted murder of your loved ones. Yeah. It'd be really difficult, I'd imagine.
So the prosecution had said that Saadi seemed to have wanted to know what it would be like to take life. Now, we heard in a statement from Amy's wife, Sian, after the verdict, she said, "Amy will never be forgotten. She touched the lives of so many. The immense support and love shown by everyone reflects just that. Amy's life has been brutally taken, but now," she said, "she can rest in peace. Her strength lives on in all of us." Now, the judge, Mrs Justice Cutts, said that after the verdict, Mr Zadi should be under no illusion, in her words, that he will be serving a lengthy minimum sentence, and that sentencing is due to take place on the 28th of March back at Winchester Crown Court.
OK, Molly, thank you. Molly Malone with the latest. Now, inflation has gone up for the second month in a row. Bad news for anyone hoping for an interest rate cut when the Bank of England announces its decision tomorrow. Rises in the price of fuel, clothing, food and tobacco, all contributing to this increase. Our business correspondent Gurpreet Narwan explains.
The festive season. It should be boom time for the economy. But there are warning lights flashing. Inflation is on the up. Shoppers in Manchester say it's going to be an expensive Christmas this year.
I'm a PhD student, so I don't exactly get a lot of money, so it's actually really difficult to get people the gifts I want to get them because I can't afford it this year.
I try and sort of make my own things to keep it a little cheaper, which is it's a bit more humbling to gift someone something that you've created yourself.
I've got 7 grandchildren, and if I buy them all, you know, like £20 a present, which might sound loads to some people, but I've reduced that this year because I just think it gets too much. It gets silly.
Inflation has come down considerably since the worst days of the cost of living crisis, but it is rising again. The index hit 2.6% in November, above the Bank of England's 2% target, and it's likely to stay above that target for longer too. The past few years have left everyone poorer. Prices are more than 20% higher than they were in 2021. But the Chancellor says she's not being complacent.
I recognise that the cost of living crisis continues to bite. That's why in the budget we increased the national living wage, a pay rise for 3 million workers, and it's why we froze fuel duty so that motorists are not paying more at the pumps.
But the measures in the Chancellor's budget are also pushing inflation higher. Her budget included a big increase in public spending as well as tax rises that will put upward pressure on prices, keeping inflation above target for longer. The headline rate should eventually fall back. But if the past few years have taught us anything, it's that inflation can be temperamental and stubborn, quickly moving against us. It explains why the Bank of England is taking a cautious approach to cutting interest rates. The Monetary Policy Committee is likely to keep interest rates on hold when it meets tomorrow.
I think there were quite significant expectations for interest rate reductions. They've not happened this year, and they're not going to happen, I think, next year. So interest rates are probably going to hover around 4 to 5%.
Interest rates went up like a rocket. but they are coming down like a snowflake. With inflation on the up again, we have some time to wait before they settle. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
Still to come here on the UK tonight, pressure is growing on the Prime Minister over the decision not to compensate Waspi women. We'll be hearing from their campaign director next. The Prime Minister has defended a decision not to compensate women affected by changes to their retirement age, saying it wouldn't be in the interests of taxpayers. There's been a growing backlash to this decision, with the government being accused of hypocrisy. The so-called Waspi women, women who were born in the 1950s, have been calling for compensation because of changes to the state pension age, which they say they weren't properly informed about.
It is a serious issue. It's a complex issue. The research, as he knows, shows that 90% of those impacted knew about the changes that were taking place. And I'm afraid to say the taxpayer simply can't afford the tens of billions of pounds in compensation when the evidence does show that 90% of those impacted did know about it. That's because of the state of our economy.
Well, the campaign director of Waspi, Jane Cowley, joins us now. Jane, good of you to join us this evening. Thank you so much. Perhaps you can bring viewers who haven't been following the story particularly closely up to date. For example, how are you affected by this?
Well, this is something our campaign has been going on for many years now, and we're a group of women born in the 1950s who had their state pension age changed from 60 to up to 66. We don't disagree with that change at all. In fact, we've said we support it. But the difficulty is that the DWP didn't tell us about that change. So many of us got to nearly 60 and only then found out that we had to work up to another 6 years before we were going to get our state pension. And at that point, many of us had made decisions that were difficult to go back on, like giving up work because you were looking after an elderly relative, that kind of thing. And it actually put us in a very difficult position financially. It deprived us of the choice to make the right decisions.
Yeah, they're called retirement plans for a reason, right? You have to plan ahead, and part of that is financial planning. How much do you think you lost out on?
Well, in terms of the lost pension, and we're not saying we should have our pensions back. That's not what we're saying. What we are saying is that we had an unexpected drop in income of up to about £48,000. Now, I think most people would find that pretty difficult to cope with without having the proper notice and the chance to plan for it.
Yeah, it's not an insignificant sum by any means, is it? When Labour won the general election, you must have thought that you had a pretty good case, because Sir Keir Starmer, now the Prime Minister, he was all for supporting Waspi women. So was the now Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, all queuing up for pictures with you and other Waspi women supporting your campaign, saying, yes, of course we will support you and get you the financial redress that you deserve. I wonder what you make of these pictures now, given the government's decision today to say, look, we simply can't afford to help you.
Well, it's simply a betrayal. That there is no other word for it. As you say, Labour MPs, including a large number of frontbench MPs who weren't in your slides just then, have supported Waspi all the way through. And they haven't given us really any indication that they had changed their view. We've had Labour MPs. We know that we have a huge amount of support from backbench Labour MPs. We had an event in Parliament in September where we had Labour MPs queuing outside the door to come in and hold up a pledge board, as you're seeing there, to say that they support us. Now, that's after the election, after the publication of the Ombudsman's report, and they were still very keen to show their support for compensation for Waspi women.
So support after the general election. What do you think is going to happen now? Do you think that support in certain sections of the Labour Party is strong enough to force a U-turn on this?
I think it is. I mean, we're already seeing reports on social media that we've got over 100 Labour MPs who are inclined to get the government to change their view. We've built up good relationships with those MPs over the years. They see, as we do, that an injustice has happened, an injustice caused by a government department, and that injustice merits compensation. They really aren't happy that the government, on the one hand, has accepted that maladministration has happened, but is saying, actually, sorry, we can't afford to pay you any compensation. They don't see that as fair.
Yeah, I mean, Jane, this argument from the government that they simply can't afford it, like you said, you're not looking for the full amount of your pension to be given to you, looking for some form of compensation, because while some women, may have had a partner to help support them, may have been able to have other financial plans to fall back on, many didn't, right? And we're looking at, an estimated over 3 million women affected. Explain to me why, for some women, this money actually really matters.
It does matter. I think, we have to remember these, again, women born in the 1950s. When we were working, many companies didn't open up their pension schemes to women. Often women were, once they had children back in the 1990s, 1980s, gave up work because they stayed at home and looked after their children, so they had gaps in their employment record. They couldn't actually build up enough national insurance contributions often to get the full state pension, so they're trying to exist on a reduced pension. Any small savings that they managed to put together, planning for their retirement that they thought was going to be at 60, have been eaten up over these few years because they've had to rely on those to get through the gap between their expected retirement age and their actual retirement age. Our own research shows that a large proportion of Waspi women are in poverty, some even relying on food banks. So it has had a major impact on their finances.
Jane, final
I
word.
just wanted to say to that as well in terms of the cost.
You beat me to it, go.
The government has saved to date over £180 billion by raising women's state pension age. That's a huge sum of money. The amount of compensation, which is not tens of billions, as Keir Starmer keeps saying, it is actually around 10 billion, is a tiny fraction of that amount. It seems when a government department has done things wrong, it really should own up to it and pay the compensation for the injustice that it's caused.
OK, Jane Cowley, really good of you to come on tonight, standing up for the Waspi women. Thank you very much. I'm sure we will speak again. The campaign director, Jane Cowley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come on the programme. As rumours continue to swirl around Marcus Rashford's future, he's been rather busy this week delivering presents to pupils at his old primary school. We'll be hearing from one of the teachers there. And in the sport, the Chelsea manager is giving his full support to Mykhailo Mudryk after the winger's failed drugs test. We'll have more on that next.
They were prepared for protest, but not on this scale.
How difficult is this to police tonight?
Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
The last smoke and steam rises into the sky above Blast Furnace 4.
Today is a day in history. Sky News, get the full story first, free, wherever you get your news.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute. Okay.
We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that? Maverick, here on the red carpet. I'm so excited. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well?
I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me.
Yeah, okay.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
The holidays just got merrier and brighter.
It's been everything you'd expect and hope for.
Feast your eyes on our favourite time of the year with gifts galore, magical moments, and holiday cheers.
Snappy and certain, right on the line!
Premier League festive fixtures. Premier League festive fixtures on USA.
We are talking about Marcus Rashford in a little while. We're talking about his future at Manchester United last night. Tonight, we're talking a little bit about that, but also about his visit to his old primary school this week. He made a surprise festive visit, some very smiley faces at the school in Wythenshawe. But first, Teddy is here with the sport. We're not talking Manchester United tonight. No. We're talking Chelsea. Yeah. Their manager giving his full support to Mykhailo Mudryk. The winger provisionally suspended by the FA. This is about an irregular drugs test.
It is. So the A samples come back. We'll talk more about it in a second. But Mykhailo Mudryk, 23-year-old winger for Ukraine and Chelsea, tested positive for meldonium, which is a banned substance. Under that, FA provisionally ban him. He has said, though, he's absolutely convinced of his innocence. He says that he's done everything he can. He's had the same diet as he had in August when he passed the test. This was on international duty away with the Ukraine. And we wondered what his head coach, Enzo Maresca, would make of the situation. We know that Mudryk hasn't played for the past 5 games with a virus, but when asked today ahead of their game against Shamrock Rovers, he was unequivocal. We trust him, we believe him, we back him. Here is the Chelsea head coach, Enzo Maresca.
I try to have a relation with players quite close because I like in that way. So even with Misha, it's exactly the same, and I'm there to try to help Misha in anything he needs. And because in this moment it's normal that he's going to need help from the club, from me, from the teammates, and we are all there trying to support.
Meantime, Mudryk left in complete limbo, unable to play. What happens next?
So we have to wait for the B sample to come back. If that is negative for meldonium, then I believe it'll be a lot stronger for his case. Otherwise, the Football Association has a decision to make. They operate under FIFA's guidelines, which include a sanction of up to 4 years in instances like this. There's a strict liability policy. Whatever goes into your body, you are liable for. The only thing is, it's interesting the support of Chelsea, how this one plays out. We'll await the B sample. At the moment, Mudryk can't train with the club, can't play in the games coming up this week against Shamrock Rovers, against Everton for certain, but he's training at home. And there were reports about maybe casting aspersions of why he didn't play in those 5 games. We can confirm he did have a virus, so he hasn't been playing since the end of November. But Mykhailo Mudryk right now out of the picture at Chelsea. We will await that B sample, bring you news as and when we get it. Meanwhile, it's a busy night in the Carabao Cup. Arsenal and Liverpool, 2 of the teams in action. We'll update you in a second.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
I remember when I first went on trial at under 9, I just couldn't concentrate. There'd be like games going on and I'd be looking over there. I just went off and played club football for a while, went back at under 11s, under 12s. And yeah, I had a lot of ups and downs. There was times where I was 16, you know, when you want to go out and stuff like that. And that's when you truly have to make sacrifices that I found it really difficult. Once I got my feet on the ground and worked hard, then yeah, the journey through the youth team was much easier.
Spent time on loan at Weston-super-Mare. Did the progression from there always seem straightforward?
I always take things, you know, day by day and not look too far ahead. So I was just focusing on progressing and just trying to cement myself in the first team because I didn't see myself as a first team player then. Yeah, I was just trying to focus on playing, you know, a lot of games and improving and then see where that took me.
And then the moves came, of course, Brentford first and then Aston Villa.
I can remember Brentford, they wanted me the season before, but they said I'd be going into the B team and I didn't want to do that, so I played another full season, got another 30, 40 games under my belt and then went to Brentford and I felt like I was in a much better position. It worked out really well. I think just appreciating the little things is what's helped me. If you can score goals, and you can score goals in any league, and then I think, you know, just keep working hard and just believing in yourself, because if you have that belief, then that's the most important thing. And football changes so quickly, so you need that little bit of luck.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Now, Manchester United forward Marcus Rashford has made a few headlines in the last couple of days after saying that he was looking for a new challenge. But while rumours of where he might go next have been swirling in the football world, the 27-year-old has been busy visiting his old primary school. Rashford heading back to Button Lane in South Manchester, meeting the pupils there who know him only too well, handing out a whopping 420 Christmas presents. She likes hers, she hasn't even opened it yet. Earlier, I caught up with a sports coach for the school, Chris Walker, and I started by asking him what sort of impact Marcus Rashford's surprise visit had on the kids.
There's obviously all different aspects of children in our school, and, you know, the buzz around school this morning has been fantastic. The buzz after school yesterday was fantastic as well. So the experience for the children, just to see him, made 420 children's Christmases. Just seeing him.
Yeah. And this isn't, you know, just a one-off for Christmas. Marcus Rashford, as a former pupil, comes back to the school a lot. I mean, you've been there for a decade, and he does a lot for the school, doesn't he?
Yeah. So like you said, it's not just the first time he's been to Button Lane to drop off presents for children at Christmas. He's donated money for school before. We've also got a 4G football pitch, which has helped with the sport education in school. We've got a mural of Marcus as well. So he comes back, I'd probably say he comes back twice a year, or he gets involved with the school 2 or 3 times. There's always something related with Marcus in school. And, you know, the children know him, the children love him.
Did you get any sense, Chris, that this might have been a farewell visit? Because he did hint about his Manchester United future, and you're wearing a red top there. I don't know if that gives away your allegiance when it comes to football clubs in Manchester.
Yeah.
Did you get any sense of that? Did he say anything to the kids?
Nothing.
Nothing at all. I bet there were some Man U fans in that little cohort of kids.
No children asked. No children asked anything. No staff asked. It's not our place to say. Yeah. It's not our place to get involved with that. We're just involved in the school side of things, making the children appreciate what they got off Marcus and how valued he is in school. You know, no matter what happens or no matter where he is, he always will remember his roots at Button Lane Primary School. He's, to us, he's just a normal guy, humble guy, appreciate what he's got at the moment. Our kids will appreciate what he brings to school, and no matter what, he will always be a massive, massive role model. Yeah. Massive role model to our children at our school.
And Chris, you can tell he's one of you because you're not giving anything away, which he will appreciate, and I greatly respect. He's very much, you know, part of the family there at Button Lane Primary School. And I would imagine if he does leave Manchester United, wherever he might go abroad, the close relationship with your school will remain. He's in this for the long haul, isn't he?
Of course, yeah. You know, I think when he first scored his first Europa League goal, back in, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, whenever, he's still part of that. He still comes in, you know, every time. So no matter where he is or what he's doing, whether he's in Wythenshawe or Wilmslow or London or wherever, abroad, wherever he is, he's still going to be a massive part of this school. And I think he wants to be a massive part of this school as well. He knows where he's from. His roots are here. He lived 20 seconds away from school. He still says hello to the kids, whether that's here or outside. Massive. He'll be a massive role model. He still is. Yeah. Always will be.
Now, we have got 7 sleeps to go until the big day. And if you're dreaming of a white Christmas, I've been taking a look at the weather forecast. It's not looking good, I'm afraid. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, Santa, if you're watching. The Met Office has released its forecast for Christmas Day, and it says there will be no snow this year. It's likely to be quite settled and even fairly mild in places, just to remind you, because we can have a bit of hope at Christmas, can't we? That's what it's all about. A single snowflake must fall for it to be declared a white Christmas anywhere in the UK. But officially, it's not going to be a white Christmas, I am afraid. That's all from us on that note. The World is up next with Gillian Joseph. I'll see you tomorrow night.